Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colin Brennan with Trimble, and I'll be moderating, I guess it's almost this afternoon's panel discussion. I might just lead off with a couple of introductions for the panel members. We have Donna Soretti with the region of Waterloo. We have Roger Young with the Parks Department over the city of Vaughn. And we also have Bill Shea over at Toronto Water attending today's panel. So thank you very much for your participation today. I might start with maybe a couple of introductions on your role within the various organizations. Maybe we can start over with Donna. Do you want to give us some insights into your roles and responsibilities over at Regional Waterloo?
Sure. Thanks, Coleman. Hi, everyone. So, yes, Donna Soretti with the region of Waterloo. For those of you who might not know, we're located about 100 kilometers west of where we sit here today. And we're actually the 10th largest municipality in Canada. We're a two-tier environment there. But when you look at the regional level, we're actually the 10th largest. So not insubstantial. My role, actually, I sit in the Public Works Department, and I have a multidisciplinary team that works with me really at a kind of at a departmental / enterprise level to look at things like asset management, capital program delivery, communications, climate action, and really support each of the business units. And very much from a lens of looking to break down silos that exist. And I'm sure many of you probably know what I'm talking about when we're talking about infrastructure and public works and how things fit together. So we're trying to actually deconstruct that a little bit and see how we can perhaps look at fitting things together using practice areas like asset management in a little bit of a different way to just build some more synergy with the work that we do every day and the work that we are continuously planning to operate and maintain our infrastructure. Thanks.
Thanks, Donna. And we'll hand it over to Roger.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Colm, and good morning, everybody. Roger Young, I'm the Director of Parks, Forestry, and Horticulture Operations at the City of Vaughn. It's a new role for me in the last 7 weeks or so. Previous to this, I had 10 years of my career focused on asset management. So I was the Manager of Corporate Asset Management at the City of Vaughn, left for a short stint at the Greater Toronto Airports Authority as the Associate Director of Enterprise Asset Management. So returning back to the City of Vaughn in a public works role, I strongly believe that all of us in municipal government are becoming asset managers over time. Whether you're in finance or public works or engineering, our focus is shifting to, as you mentioned, breaking down the barriers and building enterprise processes. We're all becoming asset managers through this transition. So my focus right now with my team is really around work management and labor planning. We're a 100% operations and maintenance-based department within Public Works. So we're certainly focused on building strong relationships with our partners in development so that we can project growth a little more accurately and get a better handle on the impact of the business growing over time. So that's kind of my focus. I strongly believe in all the asset management principles that municipalities have adopted, and certainly think there's a ton of opportunity to grow from, OREG 588 prescribing those long-term asset management plans, but really growing into enterprise asset management where operations and maintenance have a bigger stake at the table too as well. So I'll pass it on.
Great. Thanks, Roger. And last but not least, we have Bill Shea.
Is this thing on? Oh, yeah.
There you go. You're good.
Hi, I'm Bill Shea. I'm the Director of Distribution and Collection for Toronto Water. And essentially what that means is my group looks after essentially all of the Toronto Water infrastructure outside of the plants. Toronto Water has about 11,000 kilometers of sewers and about 5,000 kilometers of water main, and along with hundreds of thousands of other little things that we need to look after. So what that translates to is a lot of work, a lot of asset management, and a lot of organization. So the idea of digital transformation particularly appeals to me. It's something that I've certainly tried to do in our operations and moving outside of. Nice to see another ops person. That moving into sort of the greater asset management in the city, but it's a lot of work with things like climate change and what we have to deal with there, bigger storms, colder winters. We've got Metrolinks going through our city that creates all kinds of problems because they're digging up our roads and moving our infrastructure, and a million other things. Roads being shut down, traffic, and all that kind of jazz. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you, Bill. So the first part of the topic for today is digital transformation of lifecycle construction management. And if you're asking what that is, the definition: digital transformation is the process by which organizations embed technologies across their businesses to drive fundamental change. So I might kick things off maybe with Donna. Donna is actively involved with digital transformation over at the region of Waterloo. Donna, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing to modernizing a large organization like the region of Waterloo today?
Thanks, Colm. So I think I'm going to go back to one of the comments I made in my introductory remarks, which is really about siloed culture almost. And so one of the things that's really important to point out, especially when you're talking about transformation, even some of the language itself can be a little bit off-putting in the sense that depending on how you speak about what it is you're intending on doing, what it is the vision, what the vision is, what the aspirations are, you can actually alienate staff, especially staff that have been around for quite some time, who have done and do every day amazing work and have gotten us to the place where we are today and are maintaining those thousands of kilometers of pipes and hundreds of kilometers of roadway, for example. So one of the things that's I think really important when dealing with staff is just being really intentional about intentional with language and making sure that that you give credit where credit is due, and you're basically not conveying a message that we need to change because what's been done in the past was wrong or insufficient or broken, or these, these types of sentiments that can sometimes come through. So that's kind of one lesson that I've learned through some of the work that we've done, particularly with our asset management systems, where we now have a well-deployed and fairly mature enterprise asset management work management system that is being used corporately. The other thing that I'll mention is just on the concept of buy-in. Oftentimes, you go into one of these transformative initiatives with the idea that, we've got to sell this. We've got to sell this up front. We've got to get buy-in, particularly from senior leadership. Our charters speak about who's our corporate sponsor. All of those executive sponsor, all of those things are absolutely important and worth doing. And, kind of that setting the tone at the outset is important. But what I've learned and observed is that buy-in is actually an outcome. It's an outcome of demonstrating that, you're doing the right thing, that there's a value add, that, the folks that are out there in the field are actually able to do more work because of the tools that you're putting in their hands. And that's really, how you really build momentum. Obviously, there's going to be your champions and cheerleaders at the outset, and you really want to capture, those folks and their enthusiasm and, likelihood of early adoption. But I like I say, I think it's a little bit of turning that idea on its head, that really buy-in is an outcome. So perhaps I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you, Donna. And I might just do a a shameless plug at this stage for Trimble. Bill, your parent organization, the City of Toronto, recently procured eBuilder to help with the transformation and modernization of the Engineering Construction Services Group. What initiatives are you introducing to help Toronto Water cope with the rapidly expanding customer base coupled with aging infrastructure?
I could really relate to what you said. It's not my topic, but that I really like the concept of that buy-in being an outcome, because I feel exactly the same way. Anyway, having said that, so I'm going to be high level here because we don't have a ton of time, and we are using eBuilder in the City of Toronto. We're also using Trimble Unity, shameless plug for you again, and some other things with Trimble to help us towards our digital transformation. So I see the way we look at this in our asset management as, it sounds really simple. What do we have? And I'm going to use the linear infrastructure because that's really my area. But I'll touch on the vertical as well. But what do we have? Where is it? What condition is it in, and how is it performing? And those seem like pretty simple questions. But when all your infrastructure is underground and sometimes over 100 years old, not such a simple question at all. So really moving towards all of those points and bringing in digital transformation. So what's in the ground? We all, we have a GIS system. GIS is critical to linear infrastructure that tells us most of what's in the ground. But there's obviously a bunch of stuff missing because it's older. And waiting for the dreaded as-built. Anybody who's ever worked on a construction project is something that we all deal with, and that new infrastructure is not going to go into our GIS system until those as-builts come, and sometimes you're waiting, 3 years for that in certain cases. So that's a message to all you consultants out there. I'm wagging my finger. What condition it's in? Where it is. So what it is, again, going through these as-builts, where it is, same thing, using GIS systems to accurately pinpoint where all this stuff is. If you don't know where it is, you don't know what it is, you can't really plan for the future, you can't even plan your maintenance. What condition it's in, and how it's performing. Now that really lends itself to digital technology. So what we've done in that aspect is, traditionally condition inspection involves CCTV in your sewers and sometimes even in your water mains, which we've done. And then you have people looking at that, and that's with 11,000 kilometers of sewers, for instance. That's a lot of people looking at a lot of stuff. So what we've started to pilot there is trying to use some AI to pick out some of the conditions. Again, that's something it's an emerging technology. You hear a lot about it in machine learning. But it does work, but it's still, I would say, in its infancy for things like that. We also use in our infrastructure, instead of putting people in there or cameras where they don't fit, we do things like we have drones to look at our infrastructure from top, and sometimes in the sewers. We use submersible ROVs to actually go into the sewers and inspect things. We do LiDAR scans of our sewers. Condition assessment, well, that's kind of performance is the big one, especially for an operations person, but that really ties into your asset management as well. We need to know what the condition of these assets are. So really what we've done there is not only using sort of the AI technology, we're really trying to tie that into our existing data as well. And put sensors out all over the city. So one of the things we want to do for that sort of performance and condition assessment is create a digital twin. Now, that's some of my colleagues gave me the rolling eyes when I mentioned digital twin, because it is a big undertaking. If you don't know what a digital twin is, it's essentially putting sensors out in the field in all of your infrastructure and then tying that into a model so that you really have a real-time model of what's out. How your infrastructure is performing, and not only that, how it will perform when you add something new. So we're working on this digital twin technology, and then simply as sort of an overriding thing, using things like eBuilder for our projects, and using things like Trimble Unity with our GIS system for our frontline staff to add information as they find it in the field. So if it hasn't gotten there yet through the regular process, we can actually add it in the field to let us know what's out there. I'm going to leave it there because I could talk about this kind of stuff all day.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for your input, Bill. So I'll hand over to Roger Young. Roger, you have a vast amount of experience in enterprise asset management. From an asset management perspective, what are the core challenges right now facing the city of Vaughn?
Sure, yeah, that's a big question. I mean, there's many challenges in the asset management landscape these days, and I'll pick on one kind of specific to technology, and we touched on this a bit, Colm, earlier, where many organizations, you need to take the time to document your process in advance of adopting these technologies, right? So we often say people process technology. In the last few years, I've had a very brilliant person kind of shift my thought on that to process capability and technology. So first you need to process in a business before you have people. You then might have technology that can support those capabilities and the process. So that's the one thing I would encourage folks to take on the process mapping of your business process in advance of adopting these technologies and considering them. It's something you can present to an organization like Colm. You can come to Trimble and say, this is our business process. Now, how does your technology and the various steps that you offer in your technology, how do they implement into our business process? So that's one big step I would definitely encourage, is a lot of organizations dive into the tech and try to fit it to the business and build the process after. Sometimes it's a bit of harmony between them, definitely, but work management in a CMMS is a perfect example. So you should be documenting your process of identifying work, scheduling it, planning it, executing it, and then going to a company that offers a CMMS and saying, this is my business process. How do we overlay your product on that? So from a technology perspective, that's a big piece. I would encourage everybody to sort of pick up that skill set and embed it as your team as leaders, is process mapping these initiatives before diving into the tech. Another big one that's kind of interrelated, and from an ops and a maintenance perspective, a lot of municipalities and OREG 588 positioned us well for long-term capital or restoration plans that focused on maintaining levels of service and understanding our financial position, ensuring we were in a positive financial position. What OREG 588 doesn't touch on are kind of the needs of your operators and maintainers after the fact. So the onboarding of new assets comes with a whole set of criteria that folks like Bill and I need for our teams to continue operating and maintaining these assets over time. And in some of the more mature sectors around the world, so high-speed manufacturing and processing or petrochemical industries, they have very advanced asset management processes that they have one called asset onboarding. And typically at the engineering stage in design, you would have your engineering team preparing your work program, health and safety requirements, technical training, all that stuff that folks in the operations and maintenance side of the business need to bring these assets to life and continue operating them throughout their life cycle. So those are two kind of big challenges that I see. One is really dialing in your process and defining that before you adopt the technology. So that's a capability you have to build into your teams is whether you go the route of Lean or Six Sigma, but really figuring out process and how to build that into the organization. And then the second one, which is a bit of a shameless plug for the ops and maintenance folks, is really that onboarding piece and making sure that when we improve assets, restore assets, or bring new assets online, that you have a process to get the information to the other people in the organization that need it as well. So those are two of the bigger challenges that I'm seeing.
Great, thanks for that input, Roger. I'd kick that question also down to Donna and ask her about asset management and some of the initiatives that are happening around asset management at the region of Waterloo. Also, some of the challenges that have maybe brought about some of that change as well.
Yeah, certainly. So one of our big challenges, and I'm sure many of you in the room experience this, is annual or semi-annual or on whatever frequency you're doing it, capital budget planning, right? So, and particularly in a year like this, when we're looking at, double-digit inflation on construction cost indices. So typically, what we've done at the region is probably a process that's quite familiar to some of you, which is backcasting, and then using, a whole bunch of subject matter experts to try and forecast. We've kind of run into the situation now where we're at a bit of a crossroads, and the ask of our colleagues in finance to look at different scenarios around capital planning, particularly as it relates to renewal. So those assets that are due for a major intervention that require capital dollars, what happens if we push that out? And, we can provide, in discussion with our subject matter experts, a fairly reasonable explanation, a rationale related to risk, related to level of service, related to potentially cost inflation in the future as a result of deferring some of that work. But so that I suppose describes the challenge. And we saw that actually as an opportunity to try and automate some of this iterative kind of scenarios that we're typically asked to look at, and quite frankly, that we should be looking at, as part of due diligence in the capital planning process. So we have we've actually procured what's typically generically referred to as decision support software, and using our linear infrastructure on the road side, because it is fairly, as Bill described, the attributes that are associated with that set of assets are, I'll say, fairly straightforward in the sense that they can be broken down into segments, spatially located, all of those things, as opposed to, let's say, vertical assets in a wastewater treatment plant, for example. So what we've done is we've mined the data from, as I said previously, our fairly mature work management system, where we have all of those asset attributes, condition, level of service, replacement value, date of installation, so life, service life, or life in service, time in service, that sort of thing. And we've pulled them into this decision support software tool, and we're now able to actually use the computing power to do those iterations for us and effectively develop an optimized capital plan within some funding envelope that basically times the interventions on the assets to minimize risk across the portfolio. So we're just testing it. We're just doing a lot of learning around the data that we need and some of the constraints as well with the functionality of the system. But certainly, I can say that for our 2023 capital planning process, we actually did use this as a live tool to assist in developing our transportation capital program. And in fact, the data, the outputs were very, very, very helpful because it took that conversation outside of the realm of, and again, I'm sure many of you can probably relate to this, the tension that sometimes exists when having those discussions between the stewards of the funds, our finance colleagues, and the owners of the assets in the operating groups.
Is this through AI analysis? Is that how this is?
No, it's a software system. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for all of your input. That kind of concludes the panel discussion element. Donna, Roger, Bill, really appreciate all your input today. We have some time, so I really want to open up to the floor to have some questions. I mean, we've got three great panelists here with a huge amount of knowledge. I would encourage people to put up their hands, ask a question, or potentially afterwards you can come up to them. I'm sure they'll be outside for a period of time afterwards. We have a question down here. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I'll start over here.
Question for Bill. Bill, the hiccup we always have when we try new solutions is around navigating the public procurement process. And I know you are doing a lot of these GIS and other solutions, and Donna is doing any feedback on how we navigate those traditional processes?
That's a great question. Although I'm probably not the guy to ask because I try to get around the processes. Is anybody here from? No, there's no question about it. When, especially when you're trying to move fast, and any person in ops in particular loves to move fast. I mean, we deal with emergencies all the time. We deal with like things that are happening now. Really, I think to get your ducks in a row ahead of time, because procurement always wants things in the order that they want them. They want to see that you've looked at everything, but use the tools that your municipality has. And sometimes those tools might be along the lines of sole sources, or again, procurement really doesn't like sole sources, but you have to have good reason for that. But I think this is feeding back a bit. Is that my baritone that's only in a microphone? My voice is like this normally. Anyway, so when you can, there are ways to design a tender for what you're really looking for. And I'm not going to say directly that I'm aiming at Trimble, but if I know what I want, and Trimble Unity is a good example, where we knew exactly what we wanted, and I had a bunch of things in mind. I put those into the tender. So you're going to get in the end what you want. It may not be Trimble, and I even said at the time, if somebody has all of the things that I want that Trimble has, I have no particular allegiance to Trimble. Sorry, Colin. But I'm still going to get what I want. So, but either way, it is very, very difficult in a municipality to navigate that. It's part of what we need to do. We do our best.
Great, thanks, Bill. There's one other question down here.
Hi, thank you, panelists. This is Mohammed Rahman. I'm a project manager with City of Kitchener. I actually especially asked Bill because he explained nicely about GIS interface using asset management. In our city, with City of Kitchener, we are using like GIS interface in asset management, like OnPoint. We are working also CityWorks. But the thing is, when we are working with this, we are working going to the field level. So why we are not thinking about the cloud-based technology, because we are now cutting edge technology, we can use emerge with that so that we can have that benefit from any corner of the boundary. So that my just concern that whether we can think about that. And another thing is, you especially mentioned about the spatial data layer when we are using the GIS. Why we also have another data layers like temporal data. Then how we are going to do that? If we have temporal data, then we are making a spreadsheet, PDF file, or scan it, and then we are putting in the system. But we want real data. So why don't we use building a window, like any tools that we can use programming? We use our IT, like using integration with SQL, Oracle, and database integration. Then we can prepare, we can make it. So why we are not then advancing? Just we are making our making our spatial data layers, and we are just storing that. So this is I believe it's the old system because we are working since a long time. So other thing is what I'm thinking. I'm a construction project manager. I'm working. Sometimes I feel it when we are doing project portfolio management. Then how we are going to do that with this? Because in a project portfolio, I have a lot of things, communications, as-built drawing, all other drawings, reports, even data models, everything, lot of things. But I cannot put my model. I need this. So why we don't think that how we can digitalize in our portfolio management, like cloud-based management, like temporal data management. So if it does, then it will help us. We can work with from any corner of the in our boundary. So what do you think about this?
I couldn't agree more. So, and what we are trying to do is to integrate a lot of things you just said. So I see GIS as not just a map. It's really for us, it's SCADA for linear assets. So, you mentioned cloud. So I try to integrate and have tried to integrate as much information into our GIS system, including real-time data, including temporal data. So it becomes like I said, a SCADA. So I have my vehicles where all their locations. I have pressure sensors around the city and some other sensors that actually show up on GIS. Things like links on the GIS system to CCTV videos of that section of sewer or water main. And then in the background, like you said, integrating that with other systems. That's really exactly where I'm trying to go. So I actually really appreciate your thoughts on that, because that is sort of lost. And if you don't look at that as a much bigger picture, I was either blessed or cursed with this sort of, I'm always looking ahead and at the outcome. And, a lot of my colleagues, and especially at a municipality, are sort of looking at the barriers, and rightfully so, because there can be a lot of barriers. So I foolishly jump into this thing thinking, I'll get there, in a year. It might take 3. But again, if you don't look at these things that you can accomplish them, like the digital twin, that's a very large project. It's expensive. But if you don't see that you can accomplish that and what benefit that will give you back, you're never going to start it. But thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill. Any other questions? Or I think we're... One more question? We actually have some.
Well, I'll try and simplify it as much as possible, which is kind of the way I need to look at it, so that it all fits inside my head, which sometimes feels like with all of these, when you start talking about digital transformation, what's inherent in that is data, of course. And as I'm sure you all know, we collect a ton of data, right? Just thinking about all those sensors deployed in all of those pipes. And the question becomes, what data are you actually going to use, and to what end? And ultimately, you want to use it to make decisions. So to your question about risk, it's really the very, very, very simple asset management 101, consequence of failure, probability of failure, and that is codified, if you will, into the software.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your participation.